What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I'll be giving you my 2020 Pac-12 preseason power rankings. So the Pac-12 is a team that has not made the playoffs since Washington made it, I believe, 3 or 4 years ago. Oh my God, come on, I have to redo that intro. What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I'll be giving you my 2020 Pac-12 preseason power rankings. So the Pac-12 is the team that the Pac-12 is a conference that has not made the playoffs since Washington made it about 3 or 4 years ago, and overall just has been the absolute worst Power 5 conference in my and I think a lot of other people's opinions. But this year the Pac-12 is on the rise. Oregon's supposed to be really good. USC is supposed to be really good. Arizona State's supposed to be really good. There are a lot of teams trending up in the Pac-12, and a conference that is overall improving, in my opinion, and definitely has a legitimate shot to get a team into the college football playoff this season. But before we take a look at the power rankings, I've compiled a list of stats from every single team in the Pac-12. These were their stats last year. On the offensive side, you're going to get their points per game, yards per game, rushing yards per game, passing yards per game, their overall offensive returning production, which is a percentage number. It basically says what percentage of the compiled stats last year is coming back. And then their opponent points per game, opponent yards per game, opponent rushing yards per game, opponent passing yards per game, and their overall defensive returning production on the defensive side. Again, defensive returning production does the same thing that the offensive returning production does. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get on into the power rankings. All right, at number 12, I have the Colorado Buffaloes. This is my worst team in the Pac-12. They were fairly okay last year, I'd say, but overall performed under expectations as Colorado has in the past, and they are losing a lot. Lots of guys on defense and lots of guys on offense. Overall, they're returning 62% of their defense, which doesn't seem like much, but they're losing some of their top playmakers, and their defense overall was not that great last year. So returning some experience, but they got some holes to fill. And overall in their offense, only returning 36%. They're losing a lot of playmakers, including their quarterback, Steve Montez. He is out and he is done. And most notably of all, they are losing their head coach, Mel Tucker. He went to go take the spot at Michigan State because Mark D'Antonio stepped down. Now, their recruiting ranking is 6th in the Pac-12, which is fairly okay, but overall Colorado is just on the downward trend, and they're going to be in some rebuilding years. And overall, just Colorado, not going to be a very good team this year, and that's why they are the bottom team in the Pac-12. Then number 11, I have the Arizona Wildcats. They were fairly decent last year, but they are bringing in the worst, their offense was fairly decent last year. Their defense could use a lot of work, returning 79% of their defense. So they're going to have some experience back, but they definitely have to play better. Their recruiting ranking is 12th in the Pac-12, so that's the worst recruiting ranking in the Pac-12. So they're not bringing in a lot of guys that can help with this Arizona team. And you look, their overall offensive returning production is 66%, which is fairly decent. It's 5th in the Pac-12, and an offense that was pretty decent last year, just struggled to score the football. But what that number does not show you is they are losing their quarterback, Khalil Tate, who was a big playmaker for this Arizona Wildcat team. They're going to need to replace him and a lot of other guys. And until I can see that they can do that up to the best of their ability and their defense improves from last year, Arizona's going to sit at number 11. At number 10, I have the Oregon State Beavers. This is a team for me, unlike Colorado and Arizona, that is trending up. They're returning 82% of their defense, which is 2nd in the Pac-12. Now, the defense wasn't that great last year, but I expect it to improve this year. Oregon State is 9th in the Pac-12 in recruiting. And overall in offense, the offense was pretty decent last year as well. Had a good rushing attack, a fairly decent passing attack, scored some points. Their defense just could not hold up with their offense, but Oregon State is only returning 35% of their offense, which is among the worst in the nation and among the worst in the Pac-12. But they are returning their quarterback, Tristan Gebbia, who I think can surprise a lot of people. But until that prediction holds true and until their defense overall improves and the recruits that they bring in can really help this Oregon State team that I think is already on the rise. They're going to sit at number 10. Number 9, I have the Washington State Cougars. They're bringing in the second worst recruiting class in the Pac-12. Overall, it's a fairly solid team last year. Or is a very good team last year on the offensive side. First in points per game, first in yards per game, first in passing yards per game. Now they were worst in rushing yards per game. But what do you expect when you have Mike Leach as your head coach? He is a passer. He loves to throw the football. And that is why the rushing attack only didn't even have 70 yards per game. They were throwing the football all the time. But Mike Leach is gone now. He went to go take the job at Mississippi State. So all of those stats are going to go down, except for the rushing attack. I think that's going to go up, and they're going to average more than 100 rushing yards per game as they're going to get their running backs involved. But it is going to be an entirely new system for Washington State. They still have Mike Leach's recruits for the most part, only returning 36% of the offense, which, again, not that great. They're going to need to step up there. Their defense needs to improve as well, but they are returning 80% of that defense, so going to have a lot of experience. And I think a defense that's going to improve, but because the offense is going to be taking several steps back from where it has been in previous years, Washington State's going to be at number 9. All right, at number 8, I have UCLA, or the University of California at Los Angeles. UCLA is another Pac-12 team that is on the rise. 6th best recruiting class in the Pac-12. They were a fairly decent team last year. They had some pretty good wins, including a comeback win against Washington State, I believe in week 4 or week 5. That was a very good game to watch. I believe the final score was like 69-63 or something like that, but very high scoring game. UCLA ended up winning that one, and they are returning the man that helped them win that game, their quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson, along with 75% of the UCLA offense, which ranks 3rd among the Pac-12 teams. I do think their offense is going to improve, but their defense last year was one of the worst in the Pac-12. Had a good rush defense, but couldn't defend the pass and let teams score the football way too much, averaged almost 35 points per game allowed, which is not great by any means, and they're only returning 53% of that defense, so not going to have a lot of experience. They got a lot of holes to fill, but I think UCLA has the talent to fill it, and I think the offense is going to start to look like what we're used to seeing from a Chip Kelly offense, like what we saw when he was at Ole Miss. But until I can see that their defense is going to improve, UCLA is going to stay at number 8. Number 7, I have the Stanford Cardinal, bringing in the 3rd best recruiting class in the Pac-12. The offense was not great last year, but they are returning their quarterback along with 71% of their offense, which is among 4th in the Pac-12. The offense just got to improve. They could throw the football well, but struggled to gain yards on the ground and overall just struggled to score the football. And their defense gave up way too many points. Their offense couldn't keep up. Their offense was averaging more yards per game than their defense was allowing, which is good. But again, they just struggled to score the football, and their defense gave up too many points. And that's why Stanford was not that great last year. But you look, they are returning 74% of their defense, which, yes, I know it's 7th in the Pac-12. However, that is still a very solid number. Stanford is going to be returning a lot of production on their defensive side, and going to have a lot of experience and got some of their big playmakers back on that Stanford defense. But until I really can see that the quarterback can play at a new level and Stanford can overall just improve, they're going to stay at number 7, but I do think this is going to be a much improved team from last year. All right, then you look, number 6 is the Utah Utes, 5th best recruiting class in the Pac-12. Look, their rushing attack was the best in the nation, or not in the nation, excuse me, the best in the Pac-12 last year. But that was highlighted by running back Zach Moss, and he is now gone. I believe he went to the NFL. They also have lost their quarterback, but they are bringing in transfer quarterback Tyler Huntley over from South Carolina. He used to be able to start right away and boost that passing offense for Utah, which was among the worst in the Pac-12 last year. But overall, I do think their offense is going to be pretty solid next year. They just got to replace Zach Moss. Still got some good weapons, but their defense, while I do think they have really good backup talent, it was absolutely amazing last year, first in every major category in the Pac-12 last year, but they're only returning 27% of their defense, and that is dead last in the entire nation. Only 27% of your defense returning, that's absolutely horrible. That is dead last in Pac-12 and dead last in the entire nation. And while I do think their defense has potential to be really, really good, they have to replace basically everyone on defense. pretty much everyone. And I do think their defense is going to be equipped this year to take down some teams in the Pac-12, and their offense should be pretty good. They got some good coaching staff there as well, but until I see that 27% does not matter for the Utah Utes, they're going to stay here at number 6. But the reason that they are this high with a percentage like that is because I feel like their offense is going to be able to get back, and I feel like their backup defenders are still fairly good. Number 5 is the Washington Huskies. They're bringing in the second best recruiting class in the Pac-12. Look, they were a fairly okay team last year. I believe they went 7-5. I just did a video on them not too long ago. Their defense was one of the better ones in the Pac-12, didn't even allow 20 points per game, and they're returning 74% of that, which is pretty good. Lots of experience coming back, lots of good playmakers for the Huskies coming back. But you look at their offense, only returning 30%, which means that they are losing quarterback Jacob Eason, the transfer from Georgia. But Jacob Sermon should be able to come in and start, and I think he's going to be fairly good. Should be able to boost that passing attack from last year. And while I do think Jacob Sermon is going to show out, he not maybe to the best of his abilities in year 1, but he does need to find some playmakers around him that he trusts to get into the end zone. And overall, the defense also, I think, needs to improve a little bit, but overall was a really solid defense. And I think Washington's going to be a sneaky good team in the Pac-12, and why they're at number 5. All right, number 4, I have the California Golden Bears, 8th best recruiting class in the Pac-12, which is okay. It's not terrible. It wasn't terrible, but it's not great. Their offense, they were among the worst in the Pac-12, but they are returning quarterback Chase Garbers, and I feel like he's going to put up bigger numbers than he did last year. And you look, 93% of their offense is coming back, and guess what? That is first in the entire nation, and which makes it first in the Pac-12. First in the entire nation in offensive returning production. I do think that their offense is going to improve, and they're bringing back, I think, pretty much every single starter on that offense. Correct me if I'm wrong, California fans, but pretty sure you're returning every single starter on offense, and I've already mentioned Chase Garbers is coming back. Offense should improve tenfold from where it was last year, and their defense was pretty good last year as well. But they are only returning 50% of that defense, so they're going to have to replace some guys. But they still have some experience, and I feel like Cal's defense, while I don't think it's going to be as good as it was last year, is still going to be a fairly decent defense. And I feel like California, just like Washington, can surprise a lot of teams in the Pac-12, and that's why I have California up here at number 4. At number 3, I have the Arizona State Sun Devils. This is a team that I really feel like can make a playoff push this year, and while I think it's very unlikely to happen, I think they definitely have the potential to. 4th best recruiting class in the Pac-12. You look, their offense was pretty shaky last year, but Jaden Daniels really impressed me as a freshman, and while they are losing Brandon Ayuk, they are returning Frank Darby, who I feel like isn't as good as Brandon Ayuk, but definitely has the potential to be a Brandon Ayuk-type player for Arizona State. And they also are losing Eno Benjamin, their running back, hence why they're only returning 50% of their offense. So half of their offense is coming back, half of it is gone. So they're going to have to replace Eno Benjamin. But Frank Darby, I think, is definitely the number 1 guy and is definitely going to be able to play, not maybe as good as Brandon Ayuk, but somewhat to the level of Brandon Ayuk. And their defense overall was pretty solid last year as well, only 22.5 points per game, not even 400 yards per game allowed. And 76% of that defense is coming back, and a defense I feel like is going to be improved from last year, especially in the passing game. They got some good safeties and recruiting that are going to be able to come in and help this Arizona State team. I think Jaden Daniels is going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the nation this year. I have him definitely in the top 15 quarterbacks this year. He's really going to show out and really impressed me as a freshman, up there with the best freshman last year, although I think there were a couple freshmen better than him last year. But this year, he definitely has the talent around him, and I think the coach has done a great job over there at Arizona State. Just an absolutely phenomenal job, and Arizona State definitely can compete with a lot of the teams in the Pac-12 this year, and probably has a chance to upset the 2 teams that are ahead of them, and you probably could guess who they are by now. But until I see that the loss to Brandon Ayuk wasn't that big of a deal, and although I think it is going to be big of a deal, and until Frank Darby can play like him, and until they can replace Eno Benjamin, and that defense just takes a step up, Arizona State is going to be here at number 3. But I do think James Daniels is going to have a really, really good season. All right, number 2 is the Southern California Trojans. USC is here at number 2, and this surprised me. They're bringing in the 10th ranked recruiting class in the Pac-12, which, if you didn't know, that means that is 3rd worst in the Pac-12, which is crazy. I did not think they had that bad of a recruiting class, but they did. Points per game, scored the ball really well, but of course that was with Michael Pittman, and he is gone, although they do have some great talent like Amon-Ra St. Brown. Still going to be really good. Tyler Vaughn's out there as well. I think that USC's offense is going to be one of the more explosive ones in the Pac-12, if not in the entire nation, because they also are returning their quarterback, Keaton Slavis, who I think is definitely a top 10 quarterback this year. He's going to be really, really good in my opinion, and had some great numbers last year, being thrown in basically not even the first game of the season, like maybe the 3rd or 4th game of the season. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Keaton Slavis got thrown in there late and performed really, really well. USC is one of the top teams in returning production, and that also shows on the defensive side. 87% of their defense returning. That is first in the Pac-12. But overall, the defense, I think, has to improve. They just got to get teams out of the end zone, stop teams from getting down the field. And overall, until I can see that USC's defense can improve, I don't think that they're going to be able to pass the team that's at number 1. Because who else at number 1 but the Oregon Ducks? I mean, first in recruiting class, you look there, pretty darn close to first in every single major category. They were outscoring opponents by almost an average of 20 points per game, which is crazy. They could score the football, they could run the football, they could pass the football, but they are losing their quarterback, Justin Herbert, along with 66% of their offense. Only 34% of their offense is coming back. So Tyler Shuck is probably going to end up being the quarterback. I know a couple other names have been thrown on, but Tyler Shuck is the favorite for me. They also are returning 1,000-yard rusher C.J. Verdell, so that rushing attack is not going to go anywhere. A couple wide receivers are coming back, and I think it's going to be an experienced group, but got to replace a couple guys out there. And the offensive line, while it does have Penei Sewell, who's probably going to be a top 10 draft pick in 2021, just has got to replace some guys. So Oregon's offense may be a little bit of a question, but still going to be one of the better offenses in the entirety of the Pac-12. And their defense was very good last year, and they are returning 81% of that defense, which ranks 3rd in the Pac-12. So Oregon's defense isn't going to go anywhere, in my opinion. They're still going to be one of the better defenses, and they have a tough non-conference game, of course, against Ohio State, but I do think that they may be able to put up a good fight against Ohio State, especially with that defense, and if Tyler Shuck can really impress, and C.J. Verdell is the running back we've expected him, or gets the production we expect of him, as he has in the past. And, I mean, Oregon was the obvious number 1 for me. I feel like USC is close, but Oregon still has the edge against USC. And all the reasons I just mentioned why Oregon is the top team in the Pac-12 and one of the favorites to make the college football playoff. All right, that's going to do it for my 2020 Pac-12 preseason power rankings. And if you guys enjoyed, please leave a like. Also consider subscribing if you are brand new to the channel, or just enjoy my content. And if you haven't done so already, please do leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Pac-12. And as always, until next time, remember, play hard, but tailgate harder. I'll see y'all in the next video. Goodbye.